What is an urban legend? Webster's Dictionary defines it as a lurid story often told by hearsay that is circulated as true. Why do we tell these stories if they're not true? We tell them for fun. They're all entertainment purposes. I'm not going to be telling you about any old urban legend today. I'm going to be telling you about legends you might not know. Legends about rock and roll. Today I'm going to tell you about the story of how Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil to learn how to play guitar. I'm also going to tell you about the Forever 27 Club. Finally, I'm going to tell you about the biggest rock and roll urban legend of them all, the Paul McCartney death hoax. Let's begin with the earliest rock and roll urban legend, the story about this man, Robert Johnson. Legend has it, according to visitthedelta.com and the story of Robert Johnson, legend has it he sold his soul to the devil to learn how to play guitar. He looked up to Son House, legendary blues guitarist. Also, according to the story of Robert Johnson on their website, Son House stated that before Robert Johnson supposedly sold his soul to the devil at the Mississippi Crossroads, he did not learn how to play a lick of the guitar. But when he came back, he played the best guitar you ever heard. Robert Johnson inspired legends such as Eric Clapton, Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, and Jack White from the White Stripes. He also has been named the number 5 guitarist of all time on Rolling Stone's Top 100 Guitarists of All Time list. That is why they say he sold his soul to learn how to play a guitar, because little is known about his real life. The only thing that is known is he was born in Mississippi and he died at the young age of 27 because he was poisoned. Speaking of 27, now that I told you about the story of Robert Johnson, I'm going to tell you about the legend of the Forever 27 Club. The Forever 27 Club is a myth that all rock musicians that have any talent die at the young age of 27. There have been many. It started with Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, and it was shortly followed by Jimi Hendrix, followed by Janis Joplin, and then 2 years after Brian Jones passed away, Jim Morrison died. Legend has it that Robert Johnson, who also died at the age of 27, is the cause of this, because when he sold his soul to the devil, he did not only sell his soul, but he sold the souls of many, many, many gifted artists at the age of 27. And their souls get to the devil at the age of 27. Rockandrollmyths.com, in an article titled The 27 Club, states that believers want to believe this, but experts say that it's because of the rock and roll lifestyle. Drugs, booze, hard partying, that could be the cause of their death at 27, not some curse. But people want to believe what they want to believe, and it's a fun story to tell, and I just told it. Now that I told you about the Forever 27 Club, I'm going to tell you about the biggest rock and roll myth of all time, the Paul McCartney death hoax, otherwise known as the Great Beatles Death Clues. According to an article in Time.com titled Separating Fact from Fiction, Paul McCartney's Death, it states that Paul McCartney died in a car crash in 1966. Well, this is what believers say. And in 1966, to prevent mass hysteria of Beatles fans, they hired a Paul McCartney look-alike named Billy Shears to fill in for Paul. Well, other skeptics state that they had visual clues, and the first visual clue that the Beatles supposedly had was the Abbey Road album. This is the album that started it all. In 1969, they came out with this album, and this is when skeptics started believing that Paul McCartney really died in a car crash in 1966. Well, according to the skeptics and the believers of this myth, this album cover represents a funeral procession, with John Lennon being the heavenly figure, the pallbearer being Ringo Starr, Paul McCartney being the dead person because he's wearing no shoes and having a cigarette in his hand. And legend states that Paul McCartney always wanted to be buried with a cigarette in his hand, followed closely by the gravedigger George Harrison. Skeptics wanted to believe that the Eagles put these visual clues in earlier albums, and one such early album is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They said the Beatles gave clues to Paul McCartney being dead, one being by the drum set. They stated if you held up a mirror on the drum set, it would say 1, he died. 1, that meaning one of the Beatles, he meaning Paul, die meaning Paul's dead. They also said that on the album cover, inside the booklet, they have Paul is wearing a patch. On this patch it says OPD. O means officially, P means pronounced, D means dead. So they said that the Beatles were given visual clues throughout all these album covers from 1966 until their breakup in Abbey Road. Is this true? Probably not. But then skeptics went even further and examined some of the Beatles' music. When they examined some of the Beatles' music, they said that the Beatles, if you play most songs backwards, it says messages like Paul is dead and love him, miss him, miss him. But in all actuality, the Beatles probably caught wind that there is a rumor going around, because it did start in 1966, but it didn't expand until 1969. So, rumor has it that the Beatles just put this in to mess with people. The Beatles were big-time drug users, and they were a big band, and they were very psychedelic, and liked to put. They were first for a lot of things. First for album covers, first for backtracking, which is what was said to have the messages in them. But it's not true. Paul McCartney has many singles, and he had his band Wings, and he's a knighted person, so he's still very much with us. But it's a very interesting tale. And that is the Beatles' death clues. So today I told you about how Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil to play guitar. I told you about the Forever 27 Club, and I told you about the biggest rock and roll myth, the Paul McCartney death hoax. Why do people tell these things? Like I said, they are just fun. I'm not telling you this because I want you to believe them. I'm telling you this because I just want you to have fun. I hope you learned something today. I had fun telling you, and thank you very much.